Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two, and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to our allotment plot, finding joy in the little things, and making the most of our small home. Together, we'll learn to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic that lies in embracing the present moment. So let's embark on this enriching adventure towards a more intentional and fulfilling life. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. Today's episode I'm super excited about. I have a guest on with me today, and that guest is Karen, and we are going to be talking about home education, but not just home education. Today we're going to be talking about what happens when you accidentally come to home education. And so this is going to be a different viewpoint, definitely from mine, because I've known since I had the kids that I was going to home educate them, and there are so many people in the home education community who this was never their first thought and they came to it almost accidentally. And so let's hear from Karen. Let's hear how she came to home education, what it looks like for her, and all of her thoughts around that. Hi, Karen. Thank you for joining me today on the podcast. Before we dive in, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
So I'm Karen. I go by the handle Cats Kids Chaos over on social media and my blog. I am a mum of a teenage daughter who is 17, almost 18, which is really quite frightening me because I feel very old. And I have a 13-year-old, almost 14-year-old boy who is home educated because he has ADHD and some other neurospicy, we like to call it. And basically, I share life a little bit about ADHD. I also have ADHD, and kind of life with us. The blog started because we had a newborn baby and a kitten, and it was completely bonkers in our house. And Cats Kids Chaos, it was actually used to be the madhouse of cats and babies, and we decided that was too long, so we changed it to Cats Kids Chaos. And that's basically what it was. It was, at one point my husband was like, "This is chaos," and I was like, "Yeah." So that's where it kind of came from. And although my kids are a bit bigger and I don't really put them on social media, they're still around, and that's basically my life, is kind of cats and children and trying to manage it all. So that's me.
So today we are going to talk about home education. So
Yeah.
you've got one of your children has been through the school system.
Yeah.
Am I right that she's in college, sixth form
She's at
college
sixth form
now?
college now. Yeah, she's doing her A levels. Yes.
Yeah, and then your son is home educated. So what led you to the decision to home educate?
So I was never going to home educate. I was always not anti, because I'm very much, particularly as a parent, I'm always very much, people need to do what works for them. But I was all like, nah, it's never going to work for us. I can't home educate, couldn't cope, wouldn't work, way too stressful. I'm not clever enough to do that. And I couldn't do the academics, and, it wouldn't be fair on anyone. And then Matthew was 7 when we pulled him from school. So the background to us home educating is quite a long one. He developed speech and hearing delays. He had very, very poor hearing and speech at about the age of 2, but it started probably when he was about 10 months old. He developed ear infections quite early on, and unfortunately nobody really got on top of them till he was about 2, when I went banging on the health visitor's door and was like, "My kid can't speak, and I'm pretty sure there's some hearing stuff going on." I'm an ex-pediatric nurse, and I did a lot of child development, so I had an idea there was something wrong, and I kind of pushed and pushed and pushed, and they eventually realized that he basically damaged his ears so badly with chronic ear infections that his hearing was very reduced, and his speech was not what it should be. We went through an ENT, we had lots of stuff done to his ears, he had grommets, and then some of the behaviors that were part of sort of the ear infections and the ongoing issues with the ears didn't go away. They kept they were like, he'll start to speak, his speech will start to improve, he'll stop screaming, a lot of the behaviors will calm down, we'll get you a little bit of occupational therapy and he'll be fine, and it'll all be fine. And it wasn't fine, it didn't get better, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong. They then decided that he had sensory processing disorder, which was, it made sense. There was a lot of things around sensory issues and behaviors that we were like, yeah, okay, this sounds right. But then he was really, really struggling in school. School just seemed to be, it just seemed to be it just didn't feel right. And he wasn't unhappy in school, but he was unhappy going to school, and his behaviors at home and his sleep and just a whole bunch of stuff. We were like, we couldn't figure out what was wrong. The school sort of sat me down and tried to send me on a parenting course, because they kept telling me that no, there was nothing wrong with Matthew at school. He was always very good. He never misbehaved. He was always very, it was always fine. There must be something wrong with me, because at home he didn't sleep. He was very tired and anxious all the time. I could never leave him. He was always with me all the time. I think in 1 year I went out one night, and he literally cried until I came back. It was almost, he just couldn't be without me. And he was 6, so you'd be like, well, a 6-year-old mum should be able to go out for a meal without the 6-year-old not coping. And they kept saying it was him. We had a lot of school refusal. I literally would take him to school, and I'm going to cry because it makes me really sad to think, but I would take him to school. I'd literally have to peel him screaming off me, and he would go in, and they'd take him in screaming, and I'd be like, oh, and I'd go home and I'd be like, this is not right. And he'd come home and he'd be very aggressive and very angry and very tired. And I kept saying to the school, this is not normal behavior for a child. A child shouldn't behave like this. Oh, but he's fine in school. There must be, maybe you need to do some parenting classes. Like, hang on a minute. I actually work a job where I teach parenting. So this isn't right. So, we then saw a private. We were like, okay, well, maybe let's look and see if we can get him some therapy, and we saw a private psychologist, and she spent some time with him, and she said, I think he's got ADHD. And we were like, really? And she said, yeah. She said, I think that what you're seeing at home and a lot of the behaviors and the not sleeping and the not being able to manage certain things that a 6-year-old should be able to manage. She said, I think he's got ADHD. So I would like you to have him assessed for ADHD. So we went and we had him assessed for ADHD, well before it was ridiculously expensive like it is now. And they came back and said, yeah, he has ADHD. And we were like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now we can get a handle on things. We approached the school and we said to the school, we've been told he's got ADHD. Can we sit down with you and make a plan so that he has a structure at school that helps him to cope, so that when he comes home, it's not just, it was awful. I mean, it was hell. And I hate to say that because, it's my child, but it was hellish. Yeah. And school refused to accept the ADHD diagnosis. They said, no, you can't, you have to go through the system. This is a private diagnosis. This could, we won't accept that. There's nothing wrong with him. There's obviously stuff going on at home. This is all just, you need to just be firmer and, and manage him better. And there's nothing, we don't think there's anything wrong. So we were like, oh, okay, maybe it is just us. And then we had an incident where I took him to school, and he didn't want to go to school. He was crying and sobbing and crying and sobbing. And they took him in to school. They peeled him off me again. And I came home and crying to Charles, my husband, down the phone. And I rang my dad, and I was crying to my dad. And then I picked him up from school in the afternoon. He had a note in his hand. And I was like, oh, what's this? And the school had basically made him sit outside the head's office for the whole morning until he calmed down. And he had to write a note apologizing to me for his behavior about going into school. And I came home and I thought, nah, can't do this. No, this is not fair. This is not fair. He's a 6-year-old kid. He's a little boy. He's not doing this to punish me. This is not him. There's something not right here. So I just said to my husband, I said, look, maybe we just pull him from school. Let's pull him from school for a bit and see if we can get him back to the happy little boy he was before he went to school. Because before he went to school, we had, sleep wasn't great, but he wasn't the way he was. There was no aggression. There was no anger. There was no anxiety that he had. And we kind of ummed and ahed, and we were like, oh, that means you've got to home educate. And I spoke to a good friend of mine who has home educated from the get-go, and she kind of talked me through and she calmed me down. And she was like, it's fine, you can do this. And then I spoke to someone else who also home educated. I looked at a few Instagram accounts and stuff and did a lot of reading, and we were like, yeah, okay, let's do this. So we wrote the letter to the school and we said, deregister him. And we went to him and we said, we've actually decided you're not going to go back to school in September. And he'd been bedwetting. I've asked him if I can share this, by the way, because obviously he's 13 and it's his life too. He'd been bedwetting. He'd never been dry at night. We'd not been able to get him dry at night. And I told him, I said, you don't have to go back to school. You can stay at home with me, and we'll take a little bit of time, and we'll see how we go. He went to bed that night, and he stopped bedwetting. That was it. And that's what sealed the deal for me. I was like, this poor child has been so traumatized by trying to cover up what's going on in his brain at school, and then coming home and just not being able to cope. This is what we have to do. So we pulled him from school, and then obviously we did about a year, and then COVID hit, and we were kind of like, we'll do a year, we'll see how it goes. And then obviously as COVID hit, all the kids were sent home from school, and we stayed. And it didn't make any sense to send him back to school. And every time we talked about sending him back to school, or we asked him, he'd be like, I don't want to go. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in it. I was it made me sad, and it made me angry, and I didn't like it, and I don't want to do it. And I'm like, you know what? It was the right thing to do. And I think it was it was the fact that he went to bed and stopped bedwetting. That told me that we'd done the right thing. It was as clear as day. I was like, this poor child's brain has been so scrambled that we needed to keep him home, and to keep him with me. And it was not something I ever thought I'd ever do. And I don't think we have any regrets. I definitely have days where I think, what am I doing? Because parenting a teenager through kind of education to try and get them somewhere has been quite challenging. But I don't regret it. And the aggression stopped, and he started to sleep a bit better. There wasn't this sort of torture of trying to get him to school in the morning and try and deal with him when he got home. And then we'd have Friday, and by Sunday night I'd have him calm and okay again, and then we'd start all over again on the Monday, and we didn't have to do any of that, and it was just better. And I do think, I've always thought, even though we did put our children into school, that we send our children to school too early in this country anyway. I think ramming children into a full day of school at 4 or 4.5, some of these kids is too much. And my husband went to school in South Africa, and they don't start full-time formal education until they're 7. So he could never wrap his head around the fact that his 4-year-old son was trotting off to basically spend 9 hours in a building trying to kind of conform to whatever it was that the school had in mind. So he couldn't get his head around that either. So it definitely feels like we made the right choice for us. So people laugh. They were like, you were never going to do this. That's the thing with parenting. You go, I'm going to do this, and you realize that you go into it with all these ideals, and then you're like, oh, hang on a minute, that's not going to work. And you have to change. And Emily's, she's in school. School actually has been, we were very lucky that primary school wasn't great for her. And again, I think it was also our primary school. We did look at, there's another primary school around the corner from us, but because the school wouldn't support us with his ADHD diagnosis and his ECHP, which is what we wanted to help him in school, they wouldn't support us, so we didn't get one. And if we'd got that, we potentially could have sent him to the primary school, which is the other one around the corner from us. Maybe he would have been okay, but actually maybe, we'll never know. I don't know that it would make much difference. But Emily has always said she doesn't want to be home educated. She's thrived in school. Secondary school's been really good for her. So it's quite strange, because I go to home ed groups, and they're like, oh, you've got one in school and one not in school. I'm like, yeah, we're a bit no. And I've said to her, I can home educate you, and she's like, no, I don't want to. So we've always kind of let our children lead in that choice. She likes school, she thrives in school, she's very happy.
It's good. It's interesting as well, isn't it? Because a lot of people do come to home education, whether it be like just I would say with home ed since birth, because we had made that decision. We were lucky enough to make that decision very early on for our children, I guess. But lots of people come to home ed because the school system has failed their children. And you're in a really unique position where you've got one child that you're home educating, and one that's actually thrived in school. So you get to see both sides. I think sometimes in home education circles it can be like very anti-school, like rhetoric, but it is the right place for some children.
It's definitely, it's it's for Emily, particularly during COVID. I think if we hadn't had the secondary school were brilliant. I mean, I have to say they were really, really good. They, because we had to shield as well, because obviously Emily has some immune condition issues, which we didn't know what COVID would do to her. So we had to shield, and the school were amazing. They called us. They were like, "Have you got a laptop? Have you got internet? We'll bring her books." They went to her locker and they brought her books home for her because she couldn't go back to school. They called us every week. We had a check-in with her tutor. They got themselves online really quickly and were really organized. They did meal packages for families. They made sure that the head teacher basically called every family and was like, "Okay, have you got access to a supermarket shop? Have you got food? Are you okay?" They were really, really good, to be fair. So I'm very glad that she was in school, because it kind of took, so when COVID hit, it did take a little bit of the pressure off, that I wasn't having to try and kind of manage Matthew and everything shut down, and he really struggled with that. Plus also try and, keep on top of Emily and make sure that she was doing what she needed to do and kind of working up to keeping that going. So they were really good. But I am of the opinion that a large chunk of the education system is quite broken. I mean, I have mentioned before on a little bit on social media, I don't talk about my day job, but I do work in safeguarding. And I find it very ironic that they come for the home educators when a lot of the time it's not the home educators. In fact, a huge chunk of the time it's very rarely the home educators that are the safeguarding problem. When you look at all the cases of the children in the news, they were all in school, or they were all in nursery, or they should have been in school, or they should have been in nursery, and the system dropped the ball. I mean, I have to be careful what I say, but I do find it, I get very antsy when people talk about safeguarding and home education. I'm like, it's not really,
Yeah, I mean,
it is.
even just as a casual observer of the news, right? Like, when something bad happens, it's always like it was known that
Yeah.
and so, like you say, it's generally the system has dropped the ball.
The system, and I think the problem with schools now is that they are trying to make it that I've got friends who are teachers. I mean, this is my thing. I don't hate teachers. I think one of my taglines on one of my social medias is, "I home educate, but I don't hate teachers," because I think teachers are amazing, because they are basically nurse, social worker, parent, the whole lot. They're not just sitting and teaching your child about, there's this country and this is your ABCs and that's an elephant and this is how you put this equation together, or this is how you grow a plant. They're doing everything for our kids, and it's a huge amount of pressure, and it's not feasible, and it's not sustainable. When I went to primary school, I went to school, I learned to read, I learned to write, I had, we did fun stuff, and I came home again. They weren't toilet training me and making sure I had washed clothes and making sure that my family had food, and that they didn't do any of that, and we basically turned it into a sort of social services thing, and the ball gets dropped, and and it then makes it really, really hard for the education system to actually educate our children.
Yeah.
And it is yeah, it is very sad. And we always said, if we had another child, I said to my husband, if we had another child, I probably wouldn't put them into the education system. From the get-go, we probably wouldn't do it. And I, like I said, I've always been very kind of like, oh, nursery's good and school is good and stuff. And I'm like, actually, maybe it's not as good as everyone thinks it is. And it definitely is a place for some children. It's a safe place, or it's the right place, and it works for that family, and the child is happy and thriving. But there's no one size fits all, and you can't say, because that child is happy in school, that child will be happy in school.
Yeah, and I think, like you said about like before we're parents, or early on in parenting, we're like, I won't do that, I won't do that, I won't do that. And then we have to eat our words and be like, okay, well, actually, maybe I will do that. It's very easy to parent hypothetical children.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's what you go into it and you have all these ideals, and then your children don't read the books, they don't read the parenting books. I'm convinced that most of the parenting books are written by people who didn't have children, or
Yes.
had children about 500 years ago, or had children and then had someone else look after their children. You've got all these parenting books that the children don't read, because obviously they don't read these books, and then it doesn't necessarily it doesn't fit. I do parenting courses, And the first thing I say to the parents that I'm working with is, I'm not here to tell you how to parent your child, because it's not my child. And I'm not there at 4 o'clock in the morning when you've had no sleep. And I'm not there when, you've had a really, really rough day. It's not my job to tell you how to parent your child. We're all getting together and we're going to talk about things that work and things that don't. And actually, just the talking about it is most of the time is what mums want. They just want someone to talk to them and tell them that they're not going mad because little Johnny doesn't sleep for 12 hours at a stretch, or or because their child, their next door neighbor's child was potty trained at 1 and their 2-year-old isn't potty trained yet, or whatever. Or dealing with quite a lot of the pressure that mums deal with. Sometimes it's just having someone to talk to and realize that actually you are doing a good job. You just in the thick of quite challenging times. But I tell parents, I'm not here to tell you how to parent your kid. I'm here to kind of provide you with a background of support, rather than this is how you should do things and this is why you shouldn't do it, because it doesn't work. It's not my child. I mean, my husband's going to a work thing next week where they're doing an introduction into parenting your ADHD child. And I said, that's great, but who is this person that's telling you about how to parent your ADHD child? Are they an ADHD parent? What's their background? And it's all very fine and well for them to tell me what to be doing, but are they going to be there when either it's not working or it's not the thing that is the right thing for our children? A lot of the time you kind of have to just go on your instinct and figure it out as you go. And sometimes it is literally just hope for the best.
What did like you? So you obviously didn't set out on this path to home educate, but has there been any sort of unexpected benefits that you have? I guess outside of your son's mental health and everything like that.
I think there's a couple of things. So obviously one of the benefits for him is he's a dancer, so he's hoping to be he's hoping to go vocationally to a ballet school when he's 16. We're kind of holding off on full-time dance till then, because I feel quite strongly that he's very young to be making that choice. It's quite a tough career path, and the longer we can hold off on that, the better for him, I think. So he's been able to explore what he's passionate about and what makes him happy in a way that I don't think he'd have been able to do if he was in full-time education, because he'd be working towards his GCSEs now, and his peers are all like under huge pressure to get all the GCSEs, and they've got lots of studying and revision coming. We are going to be doing some GCSEs because he wants to, but we're doing them over a very slow period of time. We're working up to it very gently, and we're doing far less than he would do in school, because actually you don't need as many as they make you do in school. That's the other thing. You don't have to do 10 GCSEs. So it's felt like he's been under a lot less pressure, and his kind of teenage years and his later childhood has been much more relaxed. I think also it's been, I feel like I talk to friends of mine whose kids are off at secondary school, and they talk about how they feel like they're losing their children, and they don't really have that much going on in their children's lives anymore. And I feel, for me, the advantage of home education is I've got a really strong relationship with both my kids. Emily and I have a really good relationship. We just always have. We're very alike. But I feel like Matthew and I feel like I've still got him. And that, not in a kind of, I'm this clingy mother, but I feel like I've got, he's still a child. He's not, I'm not worried about where he is or who he's with or what he's picking up at school, or, I feel like it's kept him a bit more innocent and a bit more like a child for a longer period of time. I see some in my job in safeguarding, I see some of the stuff that, comes out of secondary school and some of the things I've worked on. And I'm like, I'm really glad that my boy, who is, ADHD makes you more vulnerable to certain things, and it can sometimes make life more complicated. I'm very glad that we don't have that I don't have to worry about what might be, what's going on. So it sounds protective, but actually I think people think that when your kids go off to secondary school and they turn into teenagers, you don't need to parent them anymore. And actually, I think you need to parent them more. And I think you need to be there for them. And I think they need a lot more protecting. They need a lot more support. They need a lot more guidance. And if you haven't got a good relationship with them, it's really hard to do that. And Matthew and I are kind of like, we're sort of partners in crime. together in a way. We're together a lot, and I do feel like, when he does go off, if he does go off to dance school, or if he goes off to college or university, I feel like I'm not losing him quite so much, because we've had such a good time together. It definitely, ironically, it feels safer to have him at home than it does to put him in school, with a lot of the stuff that I hear and see. And we've done great stuff. We bunk off and we go to the museum for the day. We've gone off and done things, and it feels really like it. I just feel like it just feels really good, and it feels like we're enjoying life. And I mean, obviously I can't work full time because I'm home educating him, so there's been things that we've had to change, but I feel like he'll go off and he'll become an adult and he'll have his own life, but I've given him this in a way that I don't think I could have given him if he'd been in secondary school or if he'd been in school. So it's definitely been it just feels like a privilege that I've had to spend time with him. I feel like, people are like, oh, can't wait to send my kids to school, and whereas I'm like, actually, I quite like spending time with him. It's been quite a nice, it's quite a nice experience that, I actually quite like spending time with my kids. I mean, there are times when I could quite cheerfully strangle them. If you'd seen me at 7:30 this morning with the pair of them, I'm like, oh, but there was just no getting out of the house without someone shouting at someone. But I like spending time with my kids, and I feel like that's been a real advantage. I've got to spend time with my children. Whereas if Matthew had been in secondary school, I wouldn't have had this at all. I just wouldn't have had that. And I wouldn't change that, I don't think.
Yeah, I love that. And going back to what you said about him and dance as well, I danced from when I was 18 months old. And when I went to secondary school, probably around the age he is now, it was very sort of like, make a definitive choice. Do you want to follow your academic route, GCSEs, A levels, university, etc., or do you want to dance? And I picked academics. And I don't think I regret that, because I didn't want to have a career in dance. But yeah, I think I really missed dance after. I think I needed a break. But then I'm sure once you leave ballet, it's very difficult to sort of weasel back into it once you've let some of that go. And I mean, I went back to ballet when I was about 19. And yeah, it's actually one of the reasons my daughter's just started ballet, and she started asking me, like, I want to go to ballerina school, and I was like, oh no, everyone's going to think that like I'm pushing this because I danced so much as a kid, and dragged my feet over it a little bit, really, probably about 6 months. And he's just started like late end of last year, really, and loves it, absolutely loves it. And so yeah, I think it, like you say, him having the freedom to explore that, but then also take those GCSEs at a slower rate, and then when he's 16 can go off and if he wants to go to a dance school and dance, he's almost got the best of both.
I think that's what it is. Yeah,
and
it
something
feels like it.
Yeah, just like looking back on on what I did, like, actually maybe if I had sort of the freedom of that, maybe that would have been better, having the not having to take 10 GCSEs, but actually dance. I may never have become a dancer, that may never have been on the cards for me, but even now, like, I hear them tapping when I drop my daughter off, and I'm like, I want to go to adult tap. But adult tap at her ballet school is at like 10 a.m. on a Monday morning, and I'm like,
it's not practical. No,
it's not going to happen.
No, I think it has given us a freedom, and I think also, I mean, dance is a very intense world. To be successful, you have to be really good. You have to work really hard. And I did dance for a period of time, and I've got friends who've danced, and so it's been quite good, because I'm very aware of the dance life, but I'm also aware of kind of just, that's why we've been very cautious about we thought about we did look at applications, because we're very near Richmond Park, so we did look at applications for the Royal Ballet School. we thought about, you can go at 11, and we thought, no, it's too early, it's too soon, it's a huge pressure. So for us, it's been quite nice because he's able to do a lot, and he's much less stressed than his peers. But I'm still, there in the background, just making sure that, he's well and he's happy. And we've always said that, I've always said to him, if you want to do this for a career, that's absolutely fine. We will back you. We will do everything we can. But if you just want to do this because it makes you happy, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you decide when you're 16 that you want to go to college and do something else, that's absolutely fine. But if you decide you want to go and carry on, try and be a vocational dancer and take it on, then we're there. But you must do what makes you happy. And I think that's the main thing for me, is that it makes him happy. He's obviously, I think he's good at it as dance teachers. He's just had a really good report from his ballet school from assessments at Christmas time. I haven't showed it to him yet, but he's obviously got something, so, but it's I think it's his happiness. I think we've forgotten what it is to actually be happy, and to be, and for children to be happy, and for children to feel good about themselves. It's very tricky in the society that we live in for children to just be relaxed and to be happy and to be, to just be children, and so for him, it's allowing him to have as much happiness and as much good of that as I can, within the bounds of the life that we live and the society that we live in, because adult life can be challenging. Let them have as much happiness as they can, for as long as they can.
Yeah. Like when we were younger, everyone was like, these are the best days of your life, and we were like, it was true.
I know. To be 12 again, or whatever.
I know, just like, I don't know, making daisy chains and just sitting in the sunshine, like, but I think, I think when you have children as well, you get to sort of like have a little bit of a glimpse back into that world. When I came up here to record this podcast, I left my husband downstairs making crocodiles out of Play-Doh, so he was having the best time. When it comes to home educating, obviously you've got like a foot in both camps with like home educating and school. What would you say, I guess, are like common misconceptions about home educating that are out there?
I think it's, I had a few friends and family, they were like, oh, so you basically just, you kind of just don't do anything. I think it really depends as well, because I've got friends who are unschoolers, where they don't have a set structure and they don't follow a curriculum per se, and they're very much child-led. And then I've got friends who are very curriculum orientated and are doing quite a lot of kind of, working towards getting their children quite a lot of qualifications and potentially going to sort of sixth form college and other things. So I think people think that we're all, we basically just let our children do what they want, and that they, they're going to be, coming to 18 and not have any kind of skills for life. And I think explaining to people that everything you do in life can be a learning experience. So maybe yesterday Matthew and I didn't do any academic work. I mean, he had a maths tuition session, because maths GCSE is really hard. I
remember doing it myself. I'm not sure
really
how
hard.
it.
And he's good at maths. He really loves maths. He's good at maths, but I need a little bit of help there. So we do have some extra maths help with him, and he's flying through it and he's loving it. And actually, she's brilliant with him. I hear them talking and I'm like, I don't understand a word you're saying, but you sound good. So, for him, it's not that you don't have to be sitting behind a desk all day writing out reams of essays or learning about, some poet that wrote a poem in the 16th century or whatever. You can learn from life. So no, Matthew didn't do very many academics yesterday, but we went up to London. We went to the Natural History Museum. We went to the Wildlife Photographer of the Year exhibition. And, we had some really intense conversations about, animal cruelty and how people and animals live together or don't live together, and about environmental stuff. And that was a really intense 45-minute conversation, where there were things we agreed on and things we didn't agree on. And we talked about being vegan, and I was like, would he have that kind of conversation with someone at school? Would he come out having had that conversation with someone at school? And then I'm slowly teaching him how to kind of move around London by himself. He's not ready to go by himself, but I'm slowly letting him lead the way. So he plans the route and he makes sure that he's got money on his ticket. And I'll say to him, right, okay, when's the next train? And, when are we getting off the train? So, he's learning how to be independent and to be able to manage doing something like going up to London. And then we came home and he cooked dinner. So technically he didn't do anything academic yesterday, but actually he did a lot of learning and he did a lot of life experience. And I think people think that, actually home educated kids don't do anything and they don't learn anything and they come out feral and unemployable. And actually that's really, really wrong. My good friends of mine, her daughter is actually going to go off to art college and she's been fully unschooled, home educated, and she's the most talented artist I have ever seen. She does digital art. And I'm convinced she's going to be famous, but she's never set foot in a school in her life. She's never set foot in a classroom. She's going to go off and probably have, in 10 years time, I'll be like, oh yeah, I knew her. You don't have to be sat in a classroom to learn. And I think it's also that you also can do academics. You can do academics, but you can do it your own way. There are definitely topics that we don't do. I'm like, there's completely pointless teaching that to a child. Why do we bother teaching that to children when actually there are other things we can teach them? So I think, it's this misconception that actually home educated children aren't doing anything and that we don't socialize them and we don't teach them how to, live and thrive in society. I think people still think that, which throws me, because I'm like, there are so many home educators out there and you just have to go on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and whatever and see all these people doing these amazing things with their kids. It's very, it's still very strange that we have this misconception that, home education is basically a bunch of lazy parents not doing anything with their children, when actually it's not. It's actually harder work because you're with your kid all the time. I'm responsible for Matthew fully. I'm responsible for his education. I'm responsible for his well-being. I'm responsible for everything that he does. Whereas when they go to school, the school takes that on. So it's actually a lot harder because there's no one to pick up the pieces for you. It's not a teacher in school saying, okay, he's not doing very well at maths, so we're going to give him some extra tuition. It's me going, oh, maybe, we need to be thinking about this. Or, there's a lot that we do that people don't see that is extra to just the normal everyday parenting that we do. So I think people think it's easy and we don't do very much, when actually it's quite a lot of hard work. And we do teach our children.
And I think it's funny when, people expect that home educated children are just like hidden away and they can't, they don't know how to exist in the world, when actually they spend more time in like the real world just all the time. They're always sort of in society, and more than, a schooled child who is, off at school for X amount of hours in a day.
And I think for us also, Matthew, one of the advantages for Matthew is he's definitely had more experiences. He spends a lot of time doing things that his peers don't. He's at work a little bit with me because I actually now he earns a little bit of money because he works for me. That's how he's earning his football ticket money at the moment, is he works a little bit for me. It's his sort of first job. And very few 13-year-old boys probably are earning money. I suppose they could be, but he's actually got a badge that he wears because people know who he is at work, and he's been exposed to things that his peers probably haven't, in a way that's been good for him. My son can, because I work for a women's charity, my son can tell you all about what women's rights are and what is. We were having a conversation the other day, and he said something to me, and I didn't say, he just said something, and I was like, I'm going to see if he picks himself up. And he looked at me and went, he said, that wasn't, the way I said that wasn't right, was it? And I said, no, it's fine because you're talking to me, but actually if you were talking to someone else, you probably need to phrase it different. And he went, yeah, no, he said, now I know. And he's picking up on things that he wouldn't pick up on in school because they don't teach them that. They bang on about, when the home educating assessment person came around to our house, she kept going on and on about, what about his social life and what about socializing him? And I was like, he's not a dog.
Yeah,
I'm not going to take him to the park and go, look, there's another child. I was, and it was very, I was kind of like, it's a very unnatural I don't want to diss schools totally, because I don't want people to think like, oh, we hate schools. But it's a very unnatural social structure that you have at school, and now that I've pulled him out of school, I realize it. You kind of see from the other side. And actually, he spends time with older people, he spends time with younger people, he spends time with his peers. We do make sure that he gets time with boys his own age and girls his own age. So he's at quite a lot of activities and groups with his friends and stuff. But I think people who don't home educate are kind of like, but what about socializing him? And I'm like, well, hang on a minute, we don't lock him in a cupboard and just bring him out for a maths lesson and then lock him back in the cupboard again. Or they do get out and about. And actually, I think home ed kids often have a much better social life and a much better kind of life experience, because they're not doing this kind of enforced sort of spending time in the classroom with only the same age children, and the structure that is sort of set up for them. It's definitely a lot less sort of constricted, I think.
Yeah.
And that's definitely been an advantage. I mean, he's a much better social life than I do.
Yeah, my daughter does. She's so social. She's so naturally social, and I am so naturally introverted. Like, we go to like home ed groups and stuff, and she's like, I'm gonna go and make a friend, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll be here in the corner not talking to anyone. You come get me when you've socialized.
Yeah. No, it's Matthew's like that too. He loves people. I mean, the lockdowns hit him really hard because he loves being out and about and he loves being with people. And it was really hard for him because we couldn't be. And that was his, as soon as he was able to go and do something, he was like, oh, I can go and do something. I can be with people. He really enjoys that, and it's really good. And he can have a really adult conversation. I look at some of the teenage boys, and I'm like, whereas, so for example, he goes to see a physio because he's having some physio on his ankles at the moment. And I literally just sort of sit in the corner and I'll play on my phone, or I'll make some notes, or I'll be doing some emails. And they sit and they have a full-on conversation for about 45 minutes about football. And it's a proper adult conversation, and they are completely opposite. The physio is an Arsenal fan, and Matthew is a Spurs fan, but they sit and have the nicest conversations. And I'm like, yeah, he wouldn't be getting this. This is exposure to an adult, having a conversation with an adult, learning to speak to an adult, and like relate to an adult in a way that I don't think you can teach that in school. It's really, there's definitely things that we can do for him that he wouldn't get in school. I'm totally convinced of it.
Yeah, I think as well, like when we leave school and go into like the big wide world, we're not surrounded by, our work colleagues aren't 30 people of the same age who lived in the same postcode as us. We have to work with all kinds of people with all varying, different levels in the company, different careers within a company, different ages, everything. And so, different socioeconomic backgrounds, everything. You like, when you live in like the big wide world after school, those things, it's not that like you say, sort of like that structured approach to socializing. And yeah, I've always thought, my children are obviously a lot younger, but it's like, they're very easy to make friends. And I actually, I like, I sometimes think because of their age, but I suppose it's the same all the way through. It has to be me making the effort to, we're going to go to this group, or we're going to go to this group. And home ed groups are, the home ed groups I've been to, at least, are always, everyone's very welcoming and stuff. And it's just, it's interesting to see her and see her socialize. And we'll even go to the zoo. We're like members of our local zoo, and she'll see like another child on the slide, and she's like, I'm gonna go and make friends. And I'm like,
Aww.
okay. My son, he's obviously still very little, he is not as social as she is, so it'd be really interesting to see as they grow, if they truly are like opposite in that way.
If they're very different.
Yeah, my son will be sat with me like, let's be introverts together.
Yeah, Emily's, I mean, I'm not an introvert completely. I'm quite I keep a tight circle, I think, is probably the expression that I say most often. So I will often feel like, Matthew will be, we go to the odd homemade group, bits and pieces. I mean, now he's a bit older, he tends to go to these things by himself. He doesn't want his mum there hanging around in the background. Not so much. But I am a bit more like, I'll just sort of quietly sit and drink my tea or my coffee and do some stuff on my laptop. And Emily's a lot more like me. It's interesting. She's definitely a lot more kind of much smaller circle, much more, a handful of friends rather than lots and lots of friends and lots of people. It's very interesting to see the difference between both children, and that, Charles is very sociable and friends with everybody and will talk to anybody, whereas I'm much more, I do that at work, but in my personal life I'm very much more, probably introverted, I guess you'd say. So yeah, it's very interesting to see two different, how the children are very, very different.
So if anybody is considering home educating, but maybe not out of like it not being their first preference, maybe more out of circumstance than anything, what advice would you give them?
I think if you're considering it because you're child, for us, Matthew was in school, so we had to do a massive, it was obviously a huge 360 change in life. I think you do need to think about, it's a lifestyle choice. It is a lifestyle choice. It's a big change. There are things that will come really easily, and then there are things that you're going to have to work on. I think for us, it was that you have to think about the fact that the way you look at parenting is going to change, because obviously, you when they're little and they're with you before they go off to nursery and before they go off to school, you're there, and then they go off and they start to become, I'm doing inverted commas, independent, and you kind of release them off to other people. They're coming back to you, and they're going to look to you for everything. And that's a big adjustment, particularly if you've had a child in school. You've got to adjust to that, coming back to that you're it now. It's not the teachers or the nursery or your childminder, you are it. And that's a big adjustment. But I think it is, I think you do have to kind of look at, that it's an adjustment to life, but that it's actually worth it. The changes that you're going to make, or the adjustments that you're going to make, or some of the sacrifices, because there is sacrifice. I if my children were both in school, I'd probably be working full time at the moment and earning a lot more money than I earn at the moment. And I don't regret that for 1 minute, because it's a short period of time. My kids will go, and I will go off and do the things that I want to do. I think it's also, I would say, to make sure you've got people around you that will support you. That's the, if you haven't got anyone around you that doesn't understand, or that isn't really supportive, it's harder. You can do it, you don't have to have other, you can go on your own. But if it's nice to have, even if it's just a couple of people who know what you're going through and who've either been there or are in it. So there's a mum that Matthew and Emily both went to ballet school or dance classes with both her children, and she was amazing. She was like a kind of, in the background I'd be like, and she'd be like, no, it's fine. Or I'd be like, how do I do this? And she'd be, she was really, really good. And it was just nice to have that other person to kind of talk to and go, is this okay, or is this not okay, or why am I doing this, or what's this, or how does this work? It's just good to have a couple of people to kind of come behind you and go, it's going to be okay. I think that's like with all parenting. It's nice to have someone come behind you and go, do you know what, you're doing okay. Yes, it's going to be hard, or there's going to be challenges, but you're actually doing okay and you're doing the right thing. I think that, but also people will disagree with your choices, and unless they're going to be in your house helping you parent your child, it's not up to them. Don't listen to other people, even if they violently disagree with what you want to do. Unless they're going to come into your house and help you parent your child, they don't get a say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think also it is a big adjustment. If you put, for me, because I've obviously pulled my child out of school, I think you also have to, if you're taking your child out of school to homeschool them, you need to give yourself a very, very long time to unschool, and to de-school. And initially I was like, oh no, we don't need to do that, it'll be fine, that's just something that people talk about. But actually you really, really do, you need to find your feet, and you need to kind of relearn how to be with your child and what works for you or your children, because obviously some people are doing it with more than one child. You know, you have to kind of find your feet and to let go of any kind of ideas that you have until you and your child have kind of learned how to kind of be together again. I should have given us longer. I kind of had like a target in mind of, okay, we'll spend 6 months just being, and then we'll crack on. And actually I should have given us longer to just kind of readjust to just being Matthew and I, and being a bit more relaxed about it. And the longer I've come, the more relaxed I am about stuff. You know, the more you do it, the more you're like, oh, it's fine. But I think realizing that it is a big adjustment, and that it will take you time to kind of just get into a new way of life, is the one thing I'd say. I've got a friend of mine's actually just decided to pull her son from school, and I've just said, you know, give it a year before you even think about any kind of like, this is our plan. You know, just enjoy being with each other. If you know, and you don't have to have this mad long curriculum and all these things and all these targets, because you're not in school, and that, you know, the school inspectors are not coming around and Ofsted's not coming around. You know, just be and parent your child and enjoy it. I think, you know, rather than worrying about a whole set of targets and a whole set of goals. I think it's remembering that they're your children. And you know, I work with families, and I always say that 99.9% of the time, parents are doing their best, and you're doing what's best for your children, and you're doing what works for your children, and what makes you and your family thrive. You know, he's my child, he's my son. I gave birth to him. I'm the one that gets to make the life choices with him and for him that are best for him. You know, I think we've forgotten that actually, you know, they're our children, and it's our job to do our best for them, and make it work for us. And I think we forget that actually, you know, they're my kids. You know, and I think that's what a lot of what home education is. It's taking back that these are my children, this is what I'm going to do, and we're going to do this because it's best for us, no matter what society or the government or my next door neighbors or, you know, my cousin-in-law who doesn't approve says. You know, I think that's what they're your kids, and you're doing the best for them. I think that's what I would always say. You know, and you adapt as you go, and in a year's time we might be in the thick of 5 GCSEs, or we might be doing 2. You know, we'll do what works.
Yeah, I agree. Me and my husband often have the conversation, like, you know, if anything ever comes up about home education, like from the government or whatever, it's like exactly what you said. Whose children are these? Like, they're mine. So I get to choose, you know, and I think because we live in a society that is school focused, we forget that actually going to school is opting into that form of education, and home education is equally almost the default, because you're opted into school. Like, I never opted in to the school system for my daughter, so therefore we just carry on as we were.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think, yeah, as someone who works with parents, I think one of my frustrations with the successive, we won't get into politics too much, we can do that somewhere else, but my successive governments and successive systems have taken away a lot of the actually, you know, you had these kids, you can parent these kids, you know, and obviously you do get people who have got issues and who do need a lot more support, but it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute, you know, you've had these children, so you should parent them, and you should make the choices for your children, not some bloke in Whitehall or someone sitting in a council somewhere who thinks that, you know, this is the best thing for children. You know, it's a very, yeah, we've become very kind of like, we've taken a lot of the power away from parents, and we've dumbed down parenting. We've made parents feel like they have to rely on a whole bunch of systems, when actually instinctively a lot of the time we do know what we're doing, we've just forgotten how to do it. They're mine, and actually I quite like being with them, you know, and it's, you can't, you know, oh, you like being with your child, you like spending the day with your child. I'm like, yeah, I actually do, you know. We've taken a lot of that away, and it's a real shame, because actually, you know, it makes parenting feel like a really hard job, because there's all these things that you've got to achieve, and there's all these targets you've got to hit, and all these things that the government says we should be doing. And actually, if we were allowed to kind of do it more instinctively and do what we felt was better for our families, I think a lot of people would feel a bit less like, wow, you know, this is not as awful as they think it is.
I agree as well. I think, you know, we instinctually we know, you know, what's best for, you know, our
Mm,
children, our family situation. I've spoken to people before online who are like, I wish I could home educate, but I can't. And,
mm,
you know, I think a lot of people prefer it, but you know, it's
mm,
for some feel like it's not accessible for whatever reason for their families. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I think, like you say, we've been like pulled away from what is
mm,
almost like natural and instinctual to us, and it's been taken over
mm.
by like what somebody else says we should be doing, and
Yeah.
it's it makes it difficult, I guess.
Mm.
It feels difficult.
I think it does, and I think we've got, particularly with I roll about the, this huge pressure that mums must go back to work, and I mean I am a working mum, and I've kind of I've been at home and I've done the working full time, and I'm now, I'm very part time at the moment, and I see a lot of these mums panicking about how they're going to get their mortgages paid and how they're going to get their bills paid and how they're going to kind of manage, and they've got to get their kids into nursery and stuff like that, and it does feel like it's we don't value parenting, and we don't put an emphasis on the fact that actually, we've had children because we want to have children, and we want to parent our children, and I do the whole, facilitating mums to be at home for longer than a year, or that actually it's not a bad thing to not be at work and have your children at home with you, or or even if you have your children at school, to still be at home for your children when they come home from. My mum worked, but she was always home when we came home from school.
Yeah.
She was at home, and she was at home at weekends and stuff like that, and she was there for the school holidays. And that was the best of both worlds, because she was able to go work and then to enjoy that and get the financial benefits, but she was there for us, when we needed her. And I think that's, we've forgotten that we're pushing a lot of, work, parents must work and parents must contribute, when actually bringing up children is actually a huge contribution. And I think the home ed community does that and kind of fights against the tide of, actually send your kids off to school and then go to work so that we can pay taxes, so we can go drop bombs on whatever country we're dropping bombs on next.
Yes, yeah. And that's just how they see us, isn't it? It's, there's a big push about, we're going to extend childcare to down to like
Mm,
1 year old, and all it is, it's, predominantly for people they don't want, I don't think anyway, I don't think they want us to be at home,
mm,
and over the years, like, I mean, during COVID, I mean, like even things like, um because I'm self-employed, I was entitled to the SEISS grant, but because I'd taken maternity leave in one of my 3 years
mm.
of accounting, it was considered a holiday. And I'm like, dude, that's not a holiday. There's nothing, there's nothing comparable to just having your child and raising it for the first year. It's not a holiday.
On a holiday, yeah, no.
Uh,
I'd like to think that by the time my children have children, that we value children more and we value parenting more. But yeah, I don't know.
We're gonna have to take it down from the inside.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and
That's all
sharing
right. Thank
sharing
you.
everything about home education. And where can everybody connect with you online?
So the best thing is to just look for Cats Kids Chaos, and then you'll find me. That's my, yeah. I don't think there's anyone else with that handle. Yeah, I mean, I'm different on. I've obviously joined Threads. I've abandoned Twitter and joined Threads, and I slightly different there. But Cats Kids Chaos is where you'll find me. If you put it into Google, it usually comes up with me. So, yeah, my children are they're like, oh, mum, we can find you. I'm like, oh yeah,
You're Googleable
yeah,
now.
I'm Googleable. But yeah, so you can find me as Cats Kids Chaos basically anywhere.
Excellent. Oh, well, thank you ever so much for coming on and sharing all of your experience with home education and, that part of your life and part of your children's life as well.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, I had such an amazing time recording this episode with Karen, and it was so interesting to hear her thoughts on home education, especially having one of her children in the school system as well. Now you can find Karen at Cats Kids Chaos on Instagram, on the internet. Like she said, you can just Google her and you will find her. You can find me over on Instagram at The Slow Living Collective, and you can find me on Substack, which is my absolute platform of choice, which is theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. So until next time, I will catch you in my next episode.